Good evening, you all. This is Kathy L. Murphy reporting from my little house in the woods, Murphy's Law, and I'm channeling Joanne Woodward. And because we're going to be discussing a long, hot summer, I got out one of the collection of uh, my church fans. This one happens to be Compliments of the City Drugstore in Jefferson, Texas, back in the day, but I have a lot of those. And I found these darling little sterling silver etched readers at a antique store in Winsboro, Texas yesterday. So I thought they would be perfect for my new look and new bangs, my new summertime retro look. And I'm here with the dashing and debonair Robert Gwaltney from Atlanta, Georgia. He's an author and he looks quite dapper. I love this look. Tell us about your outfit.
Thank you. Well, it is a button-down Oxford cloth shirt, a vest, and just a bow tie. I just threw it on.
A totally Southern man, Southern gentleman. You know, the only thing I could think differently would be is if you had on the suspenders they were constantly talking about, the moonshiners would disappear and somebody else would be wearing their suspenders when I was rewatching the film.
Right.
But we're talking about the first film that Joanne Woodward and Paul Newman made together. And you did a little research on this too, didn't you, Robert? A little bit of
A
background
little
on
bit, yeah. It's been a moment since I've had an opportunity to see it, so I'm looking forward to watching it this evening. But I watched a few clips. I did a quick little bit of reading on it, and yeah, it was filmed in 1958. The director was a gentleman named, let me just make sure that I get his name correct, Martin Ritt, and it was sort of his comeback film. Kathy, he had been one of those blacklisted individuals in Hollywood during the communist era, so this
Oh,
was sort of his
wow.
his reemergence back into Hollywood directing.
Well, I absolutely been the biggest fan of Joanne Woodward my entire life, and it's ironic that I got a cat at one time I had that had the biggest blue eyes, and I named it Paul Newman, and it's really funny because one of my authors, Prill Boyle, used to babysit. She lived next door to Joanne Woodward and Paul Newman, up in where she lived on up in gosh, where do they live? I'm trying to think of the city. Up in Connecticut, above. It's up north. Anyway, she used to babysit for them, and she was telling Joanne that about me and the Pulpwood Queens and how I have these cats. You can see I have two of them sleeping right here beside me. But she said, "Well, Kathy named one of her cats Paul Newman, had blue eyes," and she goes, "Well, when's she going to name one Joanne?" And I have not yet, but you know, if I get another cat, I'll have to name it Joanne Newman. But I just thought that was so strange, and I actually went up to visit Pearl Boyle, and her husband had a fabulous time tooling around the most beautiful part of the country in the world. And I'm trying to think of the city she's from, but it was wonderful. And hi, Pearl, if you're hearing this. But I love Joanne. And so I'm just really excited about my new Joanne Woodward bangs. And I'm going to keep those for the summer. I think I'm going to make my hair a little blonder just to keep in tune with that. She was so stunning in this movie and such a strong, fierce woman against her father, who was played by Orson Welles, who looked very strange in this movie to me. It did not look like Orson
No.
Welles. But you think he had some prosthetics and maybe some things?
Well,
He was not well.
maybe, and
He
I'm
was,
gonna have to do some Googling. He did not at all look like Orson Welles, so maybe it was just the makeup, perhaps. But he was a terror to work with during the filming of this movie.
I
He
heard
was hired.
many a story about Orson Welles. He fascinates me
He was,
because I think he did brilliant work. I really do.
yeah,
But he
absolutely,
was kind of a tyrant. Yeah, I think so.
yeah.
And his wife, Minnie. Oh my goodness. You know, this was based upon a William Faulkner storybook. A Long Hot Summer. It's had several remakes through the years. In fact, one of them was done and actually, I believe, filmed in historic Jefferson, Texas, with Sybil Shepherd and Don Johnson.
I
Can you
remember
imagine?
that.
So maybe after you watch this version, you'll watch that version, but there may be three. There may be actually three versions of. I'm going to have to go back and check myself. I had forgotten the movie. I watched it, about when I first moved to Holly Lake Ranch, because I was on an old movie binge, and I watched, HUD and all the Paul Newman movies, one right after, and Joanne Woodward movies, one right after another. And I kind of forgotten it. And then the minute I start watching it, I thought, oh, the similarities to Cat on a Hot Tin Roof in a lot of ways.
Well, it's as you were stating earlier, it was actually based on three pieces of work by William Faulkner. It was a novella, Spotted Horse, Barn Burning, and then a novel called The Hamlet. And they do reference. They said that some of the characters, as well as the tone, was inspired by Tennessee Williams' Cat on a Hot Tin Roof.
Well, and I think that's why I love it, because I've always been a big Tennessee Williams fan. And you know a lot of the background about Joanne Woodward and where she was raised. Why don't you share that with our listening audience
Well,
too?
yeah, so I know that she grew up on or around Thomasville, Georgia, about 20 minutes from Cairo, Georgia, where I grew up. And on occasion, she would venture back to Thomasville. I remember one year there was quite an uproar when Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward um, came into town. They actually stayed at a bed and breakfast. It was an old plantation house called Susina Plantation that was owned by a friend of mine, a fellow Cub Scout, the Walker family.
Oh my gosh. Did they get any photos or
So,
autographs?
so I was so fascinated. So I asked lots and lots of questions. They were very respectful of their privacy, so I don't know that they bothered them much. But I do know that my friend Anders had the opportunity to take Paul Newman fishing.
Oh my gosh. What a
Isn't
wonderful
that cool?
story.
Yeah.
I love the stories behind the stories of people having celebrity moments and getting to, was it last week I told you about the time I went horseback riding with John Barrett down along the bayou in
Yes.
Jefferson. One day I want to write a book just on those stories of all the incredible things I've gotten to do just because I'm a reader and hanging out with different people, and also celebrities because I've done celebrities hair. And I think people like to hear those stories because we often think they're movie stars and untouchable, but really they're just people just like us. They just have to put their guard up because some people become fan addicts. They just, won't leave them alone. They can't even eat in a restaurant because people interrupt them for autographs and different things. So the one thing you need to learn is that if you see a celebrity, it's nice to acknowledge that you recognize them, but especially in New York, you just kind of give them the nod that you know who they are, but you don't really say anything or cause anything because they want to have normal lives too. And it's fascinating to me. But Paul Newman is just always been such a gorgeous man, and Joe. They were the perfect couple, and they were married for. They got married at the same time they made this movie, and they were married until he died in. Oh, it's been several years ago, and she's still living, but
Yes.
um, they had a long, and I think very. They were companions. They were true. They really work with each other. I can just see them reading lines to each other for movies and different things. And I think they had a wonderful partnership. It's brilliant to watch in this movie to think that they got married this year, and the chemistry was there. It was.
Well, and absolutely, and they're both at the height of their good looks, I think, in this film. Um, Paul Newman, good heavens, his physique was quite unusual for that time. I mean, it was very very much a modern physique. Like a lot of leading men, they take their shirts off and they looked a little flabby, but he had washboard abs. He looked amazing.
Yeah, he was pretty fine, pretty fine. But she was a very attractive woman too.
Lovely, yeah, very striking.
they made a wonderful power couple. And I think it's it's nice to see that two people who actually show what real marriage could be really like. I'm sure it was a lot of work and they had a lot of things they had to deal with, but they handled it with such a plume and grace. It was beautiful to watch, and to watch this film is amazing. And the all of it, and this is another film that was cast perfectly. I were there any roles in it that you did not think didn't hit the mark?
No, I think that it was beautifully cast. You mentioned earlier you were talking about the remakes. It actually was a television series of the same name that aired between 1965 and 1966, and then it appears that the only other remake was for television in 1985 with Don Johnson and Sybil Shepherd and Jason Robards.
Jason Robards. They've actually done a lot of films in Jefferson, Texas, because it's a very southern city with the Spanish moss and the alligators and the plantation homes. And I'm sure, because so over 100 homes in that city have historical plaques. I'm sure that in the future it will be even used more for movie um, sets, because everything is meticulously restored. And just, Robert, you're going to have to come visit me and we're going to have to spend a day there. You would just absolutely love it. And they're having a renaissance right now. Everybody's trying to get out of California and the cities, and properties are selling in Jefferson like hotcakes. So, and they have so many really historic homes. It's beautiful. I used to own a bed and breakfast there that was a historic Louisiana race cottage. It had 10 ceilings in it in the front two rooms that were 12 different panels and levels. And the living room one had harps in the corner, and I restored those. I
Right.
completely took them back down to the tin, kilns them, and repainted them glossy white. And all the rooms in the house, the front bedroom was a cobalt violet blue, navy blue kind of color with those white glossy ceilings. And the living room and dining room were shades of amethyst. And I love that house. It was just a 2-bedroom bed and breakfast, but it, living in it reminded me of what it must have been like back in the day, of when they had these beautiful homes. And they really didn't have, the house when I bought it didn't have air conditioning. It had the space heaters,
Mhm.
and of course, we put air conditioning in, and there were ceiling fans. But you could open the front door and the back door and there would be a nice breeze, and it was built up high. It even had tin going around the top of the roof line to look like it was kind of a steamboat style. And the house is for sale today. It needs major restoration, but it is back for sale today. But back to the film, what was your favorite scene in the movie?
Oh my gosh, it's been so long, but I would have to say probably any scene between Joanne Woodward and Paul Newman. I mean, lots of wonderful, passionate dialogue. I mean, there are a lot of great lines throughout the film. There were a couple, let's see, that I marked. Let's see. Well, so I like when Ben is speaking with Ben Quick, who is speaking with.
Great name, Ben
Yeah,
Quick.
it's a great name. All right, then, run, lady, and you keep on running. Buy yourself a bus ticket and disappear. Change your name, dye your hair, get lost, and then maybe, just maybe, you're going to be safe from me.
My favorite scene, one of them, was when they were in the store and he had her backed up against the counter, and she goes, "Never would I ever have anything, to do with you." And then all of a sudden they kiss, and she just throws her arms around him. But then she pushes him back and she says, "Barn burner," and he goes, "You may say all these things, but, in the end, we're going to be married." It was powerful, and the looks on their face, the determination, his of getting her and her of not falling to, her mind was going to beat her heart, and it was just the charisma, the sparks were flying back and forth. And then my other favorite scene was when the father gets home from the hospital and he gets out of this, I guess it's an ambulance type station wagon. I don't know what it was. And he's got on the long red robe, and the Lee Remick character runs out and says, "Oh, you're home," you know, and he kisses her on the lips. And it was really a very uncomfortable moment because this is her father-in-law.
Right.
And, you know, Tony Francesco is in the back, and, you know, and it's his wife. And then they run upstairs and she's got to show him all her new clothes while Joanne Woodward's down on the porch with a visiting friend, and they can hear everything that's going on up above. You know, in Tennessee Williams and in William Faulkner's, you almost feel a little bit like a voyeur in a lot of their scenes because you're hearing things that is really private. I often think of, you know, in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof with Maggie and Brick, we're up in the bedroom and she's in that iconic white slip. You know, they're having this argument and everything, and everybody can hear it. The same thing in this film with the Lee Remick. He's chasing her around the bed and she's in her slip. I go, what is it with these slips?
Yeah. Well, it's just too hot to put clothes on.
Well, you know, women don't even wear slips anymore. I go, I guess they'd be running around in Victoria's Secret, whatever. But I love the characters in the movie, and even the townspeople. When he said, walked up to the men, and there's a scene where he walks up to the men. He's just been given a ride by Joanne Woodward and her sister-in-law, Lee Remick. And he gets out and he walks up to these men kind of loafing in front of a store and said, "What does a person do for work around here?" And they basically tell him, you know, you can go to work on a farm or you could become a moonshiner. And then for a minute, they think he's a state regulatory man. And he said, "No, I'm more of a," I think he said, "a farmer Dan" or something. And just the conversation between them. And I just think, what is the odds of somebody walking into a town now and going up to a group of people and saying, "How do you get a job around here?" It's just one of those things of the times. That's how you did it. And now everything's
Right.
done online on apps. So, you know, it made me very nostalgic for the days when people, word of mouth and conversations is what got people jobs, and just really having real life conversations. Then there's nothing, I think, worse than applying for a job online. It's so impersonal and you're just a number, you know. So I found that
Right.
intriguing. And the clothing in the movie, those starched dresses, everybody looks cool as a cucumber, and you know it was just sweltering
Oh,
sweltering hot.
absolutely.
I mean, I remember in one of the books that I read, they compared the afternoons to like a tea cake where the powdered sugar gets damp. You know, what was that?
Mockingbird.
Yes, and To Kill a
To
Mockingbird.
Kill a Mockingbird.
And, you know, it's kind of like, you know, and people took afternoon baths to cool down. And they did a lot of porch sipping and a lot of tea sipping and drinking long, cool glasses of water. And since this summer, you know, gas prices and bills have gone high, I've set my thermostat on 74 and I've gotten used to it. I never thought I would ever get used to a house this hot, but I've gotten used to it. And I actually, when I went out this week for my gallery show, I was freezing because it seemed like every place I was going was freezing cold. So it's, you know, did you grow up with air conditioning in Cairo?
Yeah.
You did. My parents had a air conditioner in their bedroom, but our house was not air conditioned. We had ceiling fans and windows were raised and drapes were pulled in the hotter part of the afternoon. And, front and back doors were open for breezes, but my parents slept so when my dad was out of town, we'd always try to sleep with my mom because they had an air conditioning.
Cool room,
But
absolutely.
it wasn't until I was in junior high that we actually had central air and heat. And my kids go, yeah, and you rode a horse through the snow 20 miles. Actually, I live 4 blocks from the high school. So no.
My Granny Louise and my mom's mother and father had window units throughout their little home. So during the summertime, I mean, the place just, it sounded like an airplane was taking off constantly.
It did. And do you remember the box fans in the windows?
Yeah.
They put them in the windows, and sometimes I don't know, they had little streamers.
Yes. And I don't know what those were for exactly.
I guess just to look up and see if it was on, because they'd be
Right.
blowing out if they were on. And at the top of my grandmother's steep stairs, there was a window and they had a fan in it, and it was always running, and it just brought I guess, the
Yeah,
cooler air in and the hot
you
air
pull
out.
the cooler air in and pull the hot air out.
But neither one of my grandparents' homes had air conditioning, or we had floor furnaces because we had basements in Kansas. We had floor furnaces in some of our homes, or they had those big box heaters in one room in the home where they were vented up and, you know, to the outside. I don't know.
Right. Yeah,
But I don't ever remember being cold. But I think it's all what you get used to.
exactly.
Really do. But a
Yeah.
long hot summer. I'd forgotten that that was a compilation of 3 stories. But William Faulkner is, I love the Southern writers because they take you to places that those things really had to have happened because the conversations are so real, and again, very much. You feel like you're almost, when you go to restaurants, do you sit in a booth and listen to conversations?
Oh, absolutely. I do like to eavesdrop. I do like to listen in on people's conversations, just just from a pace and lyrical perspective. The way that people.
Not for a gossip,
Right, yeah, not for gossip.
hearing the conversations. And I make mental note to save some of those conversations for either, working them into a conversation or a story, because some of the things you hear are just unbelievable.
Just then I mean, language was so important, and the art of verbal storytelling. There's this wonderful line that Varner says, and it's very poetic. He says, "Do you know what quick means in this country, in this county? Hellfire, ashes, and char. Flame follows that man around like a dog. He's a barn burner."
I go, well, I'm going to have to use that. I'm going, you barn burner, you. I
Yeah,
mean,
there is no lower, I guess,
stealing a horse. A
yeah,
horse thief is
horse thief and burning barns.
burning barns. Those are two of the worst country vilified careers that you could do, is be a barn burner or a horse thief. And, they back in the day, a lot of people ended up hanging from a tree for some of those things. So it was very interesting. And I love, there was another scene in the movie that thought was funny, is he tracked in mud into the house, and they had the man who was the servant look down at the rug, and there's dirt. And he doesn't say anything. He's just like, I got to clean that up. So she took the rug back to where he was staying on the farm, where he was going to start. I guess he was going to live on the farm and work.
Yeah, he was going to be a tenant farmer.
Tenant.
Jody, her brother, hired him on while their dad, Will Varner, was in the hospital.
Yep. And just for, he goes, how many hands? And he goes, oh, I just got me. And he goes, well, usually they bring about 6 hands. But the Joanne Woodward shows up with the rug, and she's got a little boy who's a charge with her, and he never says a word. But when they walk up, Ben Quick is eating watermelon, and it's there's no really exchange of words other than when they get ready to go, she goes, "You clean this rug up and then you bring it back because you tracked dirt on it." And he's just like, and then he hands the boy a slice of watermelon, and he just starts chomping on it, and he watches him walk off back across the field. It was just very touching, just him sharing his watermelon with that little boy, because obviously something cold and cool on a long, hot summer day. I thought it was precious, and but those little moments, those are things that you can't. It's hard to capture today because you don't see them. You don't.
Right. And, I mean, we find that pacing charming, and I wonder, how those sorts of stories would play today for modern audiences. And I'm sure they would. I think there's such a fascination, with the pacing of old Southern rural life that, yeah, you can make a film like The Long Hot Summer today and it play, I think.
I just wish young people, if you're watching this today, is you go back and watch some of these films because they are beautiful to watch, and they're so, these are kids, these would be their great grandparents' age now. To watch that, I love to watch. I think the 20s and 30s are my favorite because that was my grandparents' time period, and I loved all my grandparents so much. They were all, I knew three great grandmothers. And does anybody, does anybody really know their great grandmother? Did you know your great grandmothers?
I knew two great grandmothers.
I,
No, I'll take that back. I knew three great
I
grandmothers.
knew three.
I knew three of them.
And I knew them really well. I mean, they were at my grandparents' a lot. In fact, I took a vacation with my grandparents when I was just out of the second grade, and I was going to be going into the third, and they took me for 2 weeks to Colorado to visit the family relatives, the brother Harry, who lived in Colorado, and the cousins. And I got to meet my cousin Marilyn, who was like a year or two older than me, on their farm in Colorado. And I remember one night for dinner we had bear, and I don't think I ate it, but I remember they had served bear, and it was fascinating to me to meet family that looked so much like my grandparents' siblings. They looked so much alike because there were so many of them. I mean, my grandfather, I think he had 7 or 8 siblings, and then my grandmother, my mother's mother, had 12. And then when she was 14, she had her first child, who looked just like my Aunt Glenna, my great Aunt Glenna. She looked just like my grandmother's younger sister. But they were only 14 years difference in age, and there were only 14 years difference in age between my grandmother and my great grandmother. She was oldest of 12. Can you imagine? I can't even, I mean,
No.
I didn't even get married till I was, in my late 20s, and I thought that was too early. I can't imagine. When I was 14, I was a child. I mean, there was just, there's
Oh, I
just,
know. I can't imagine.
I can't.
It's just I guess that younger folks, I guess, coming along had more responsibility and earlier, I suppose, but still 14, such a baby,
Well, you saw the
so
pictures that I
young.
posted recently of my mother's side of the family, and there's pictures of my mom when she's not more than 11 or 12. And when she was 13, people go, "Your mom looked like she was 25." I go, "If you look at her, she had a, beautiful complexion, but she wore that red lipstick and those eyebrows, and it just made, they wore their hair in that style that was, I call it old lady."
Very harsh, and it age you. Yeah.
Yeah, she looked, but my mother, when
Yep.
she got to be, um, I mean, when she was my age, she looked real. My mom still looks young. I mean, let's see, she's 84. She doesn't look 84. She doesn't look like most 84. women. She's got a bob, and she just doesn't look um, her age. But that's a lot of that's genetics. But your mom, you showed a picture of your mother, and happy birthday to your mom.
Yeah, happy
You
birthday.
you really you favor your mother. You have the most beautiful teeth, both you and your mother. I mean, they're like perfect.
I do look like my mother. I, and as I get older, I think I become increasingly more like her. Yeah, I don't look, I guess I look maybe a little bit like my dad, but really more like my mom.
Yeah, you look like your mom. And I know I look like my mother because I see pictures of my mother now and I go, gosh, sometimes I go, is that me or my mom? In the 70s, she's got the long straight hair and I'm going, man, that and even my kids go, that's your mom. It looks just like you, mom. But then I have people tell me that my kids look just like me sometimes. And I see them as so totally individuals. It's always interesting. Joanne Woodward and Paul Newman had children, but he had children from a previous marriage too. So they had a total of many children,
Wow.
I think. And then he had that time in his life where he did the race car driving, which
Hmm.
was kind of fascinating. He was a very I saw him on Johnny Carson one time. And the guy that we had come who wrote Big Lucky, used to cut Paul Newman's hair. It was his very first client. He cut Paul Newman's hair for most of his Hollywood career times. And I go, what was that like? He goes, he was lovely. He was just a lovely, wonderful man. And he had difficult hair because it was curly, but it wasn't uniformly curly. Parts of it were straighter that it would have been hard to, but he always looked great.
Yeah,
But who got to his hair? I mean, all you looked at was those eyes. I mean,
absolutely.
and Joanne Woodward went through all these, you know, hairstyles, but this one, I don't know. I just think it's just adorable. I think the retro looks are kind of fun.
So would you call that like a pixie bang?
I don't know. It's just really, it's just a really short bang. And hers kind of did the same thing mine did. It went to one side and then she wore it severely back in a bun or a ponytail. Uh, and I put the headband on, but she wore, I think, lots of ribbons in the velvet ribbons or ribbons. That's back in the department store in my hometown called Zenishek's. You could go buy yards of ribbon. And I had every color. I used to always put ribbons in my hair and on the ends of my pigtails and headbands and ponytails. And people don't wear ribbons in their hair anymore.
No,
It's hard to find.
unless you're a cheerleader.
Well, yeah,
They wear those big bows.
no cheer curls and those little spiral things and stuff. Yeah, they don't wear them anymore, but headbands are back. I've got all these wonderful jeweled headbands and they're very comfortable to wear. But we will we'll have to watch another one. There's another movie of Joanne Woodward's. It's one of my favorites, and she's kind of at that teenage where she's coming out of preteen and going into full blown womanhood. And it's set in Louisiana, and I cannot remember the name of it, but I've got to research what it is. And have you seen HUD?
Yes,
Oh, that
great
was
film.
that was a great film too. But there's so many films that we can watch. But I really have to say I'm looking forward to watching. I'm going to finish watching this movie after we get done tonight. Now we pre-tape this event, everybody, so because it's Fourth of July weekend. So if you watch this on Saturday night of Fourth of July weekend, we filmed it early so that we could have time with our families and enjoy the celebrations of our freedoms in this country. And I am just so thankful, Robert, that we were able to do this. And so get your church fan out and get ready for the 4th of July. Do you have big special plans?
It's going to be a little low key. I do have, I've been invited to an afternoon gathering on the 4th. I'm actually going to take next week off, and I'm going to go on a little riding retreat in a tiny little cabin just outside of Atlanta from Tuesday until Saturday.
Oh my gosh. And listen, I just watched a show on Netflix called Vacation Travels with these three young people. And one of the places was a tree house set in Atlanta, Georgia, in a bamboo forest called the Alpaca Tree House.
Yeah,
Have
I
you
know
seen
those.
it?
Yeah, those are wonderful.
I think that would be such a fun place to go stay because the tree house is built up in stilts in this bamboo forest, and down below they have a Balinese hanging bed that the young man on the show slept in, and he woke up till alpacas. They had sprinkled carrots on him, and the alpacas were eating. I thought, man, they are adventuresome. But if you get a chance to watch that, it's right there in Atlanta, Georgia. And
Yeah, I've seen them on Airbnb.
yep.
Um, yeah, you can arrange for them. I'm going to. There's this place. It's a website. It's called Getaway, and they build these modern tiny cabins, and you can get there. They have outposts throughout the country, and they have one outside of Atlanta. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm just gonna take my computer lap desk, and they've got a big bed in front of a big picture window.
Oh, well, I've got another place for you to stay if you want to go somewhere quite fabulous. On the treehouse segment that they did, they went to another set of tree houses just outside of, just I think a little bit north of Charleston, South Carolina, and it's called Bolt Farm Treehouse Vacation Rentals. These aren't just tree houses. These are the most fantastical. They're very southern. They're up on stilts, and they've done all recycled windows, but they're very high end, shabby chic. And one of them's pink, the palest pink, and with all these windows. And the other one is all done in that shade of aqua and teal that I'm just madly in love with. And I thought, if I ever go up that way to Savannah, Beaufort, and everything, I want to go up and stay at this Bolt Farm. And it's beautiful. It's, on the low country, has incredible views. And check it out on that show on Netflix called Vacation. It's on the new
Absolutely.
top 10, shows, but I have literally gone around the world seeing all the cool places. One place I want to stay in Bali. It's $24 a night, and it's a tree house too. I'm telling you, they got the greatest. They go from budget to, mid price, like $200 to $500, and then they go to $12,000 a night.
Good grief.
And that was a private island in Hawaii that has 5 bungalows, your own helicopter at your disposal to take you in and off the island, jet skis, boats, and celebrities and corporate retreats are held there. And they have full bar, full chefs, full servants, butlers. I think it's $12,000 a night.
Oh,
Per
we
person.
should
Per
we should
person.
read that. We can go have a Pulpwood Queen riding retreat.
$12,000 per person
Quite a lot. That's crazy.
per night. Per
Per
night.
night. Wow.
Can you imagine?
No.
But there's a place in Miami that is a house. It is a house on the water, like nothing you've ever seen. It's very contemporary. It's all glass. And then for an extra so much money, you can take it out into the bay. And they had a party on it. I've never seen anything like it. You got to watch this show. It's divine if you like to travel and go. And since we can't go anywhere right now, and it doesn't look like we're going to be going anywhere because this Delta variant is hitting hard out of India around the world. It's in 70 countries now. So, and it's very aggressive and twice as dangerous. And the vaccines don't seem to be phasing it at all. So here we go. What an interesting fall we're going to have. But thank you for joining me. It's going to be a long, hot summer. Poor Portland, 119. They're having a heat wave, but I've got my fan and I've got my cool glass of water. So you have a wonderful Southern evening, and we'll see you after the 4th. Celebrate. I celebrate you, Robert Gwaltney. You're the most wonderful host ever, and I look forward to these times so much because you've made my experience during COVID so pleasurable by sharing these love of films with each other. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time, back to our regular
Yeah.
Saturday night time of 6:30. What are we watching next week?
The Southern Gothic black and white film, Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte.
Oh boy, I'm going to have to get out and do some rag rollers for that one because she's got those tumbly Southern Belle and off the shoulder Miss Charlotte. So, oh, that'll be fun. I love Bette Davis, so that will be a pleasure. So happy 4th of July. And I'll see you at the movies.
Take care. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Robert.